Everyone, welcome to my channel again. uh it's time for books. I've been waiting to do a review of this book for quite a while. I have reread my notes 2 times already. Just because I found this book to be quite revolutionary. I know it sounds like very pompous, but I have yet to read a book that stated the importance of crying as much as this book did it. So I think this is like the gist of this book. This book is all about babies, but not so much about that after all. Maybe it sounds like a contradiction to you, but uh, this book is about how to become a better person for yourself, and also how to become a better person for your baby. So it's not as much as it's all about babies, because let's admit it, very few people would grab a book about babies unless they would plan to become a parent or they have issues with their babies. Single people, most single people probably they wouldn't pick such a book. I must admit that for me, it was very interesting to read such a book because um, I expected a book about babies, but it's not so much about babies. I'm probably saying the word baby far too much, but you get my point. Um, this is the book, The Aware Baby by Aletha Solter. It has a big child in here. Yeah, this writing is beautiful, and I would dare to say that it should be a mandatory read in schools, in parenting classes. Maybe not the entire book, but someone should work on a short distillment of this book, and to introduce that to everyone who is a parent or wants to become a parent, or they're just in a couple. Because believe it or not, in this book about babies, you can find so much about yourself as a person. So this shocked me because I didn't see that coming. Yeah. So she is an internationally known expert. So this person has a lot of degrees. She has a lot of books written. She also founded the Aware Parenting Institute. So this woman knows what she's talking about. As usual, I did take some notes, quite a lot of notes, I would say. And I had to really take my time with this book, in the sense that after I've read it the first time, I was so blown away by some of the things that I've managed to find out that I really had to come back to it several times. It doesn't happen for me that often, so it's definitely a very good book. This book was first published in 1984, but it doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't feel like it. This edition is printed in 2001, but the ideas are like so 2024 that it really blew my mind. There is a very positive review of this book given by Paul Vershak. Every prospective parent on earth should read her book. So this says it all. There are several chapters in this book. I will shortly give them to you. The chapter 1 is all about the beginnings, letting your baby feel loved. The chapter 2 is about crying. This is the most fascinating chapter from this book. If you only read this chapter and nothing else, it will completely change the way you look at crying, not only from a baby's perspective, but also from an adult's perspective. Chapter 3 is about food and letting your baby become self-regulated. Chapter 4 is about sleep, letting your baby rest. Chapter 5 is about play, letting your baby learn. Chapter 6 is about conflicts, letting your baby feel respected. How often do we hear that? Giving a baby respect. We don't often hear that. We hear about teaching babies how to toilet train, how to feed them, but how to respect them, that's something new. Chapter 7, attachment, letting your baby feel safe. So long story short, these are the chapters. As usual, I will go through each and every one of them. This is quite a medium long book, so it's a lot of information, but I definitely distilled some of it for you. You don't have to be a parent to be interested in what I'm about to say. You don't have to have a baby to be interested in what I'm about to say, but you should be interested in how to become a better human being. So if you're interested in that, you will definitely want to hear what I have to say. So in the introduction, Aletha really makes a journey through parenting styles. In what kind of style did the society decide that parenting is supposed to be done? And unfortunately, most parenting that is happening today is all about authority, is all about I know everything and the baby knows so little. Babies are very self-aware, and that's fascinating. So most of the parenting styles are all about old patterns, unfortunately. And Aletha comes with a new approach, aware parenting. Her method is all about aware parenting. And this style of parenting has 3 basic aspects: the attachment style parenting, the non-punitive discipline. I know it sounds like a contradiction in terms, and acceptance of emotional release. So this is a new approach to parenting. It's even new in 2024 as I am reading this, because punishing your child or teaching them a lesson is something that still a lot of parents believe in, and it is being done on our planet, on multiple continents. It's very important to know that people who act in a hurtful way, in hurtful and stupid ways, as the author says, they do it only if they are suffering from unhealed trauma. So this might help a lot of people out there, including you, if you've had parents who did you harm, intentionally or unintentionally. This statement, I think, would bring a lot of healing to a lot of people. So if someone was abused by their parents, it's really important to know that there's a lot of suffering happening in that person already to make them act in such a hurtful way. What's very important in this parenting style is the idea that we must teach children ways to act without violence. We have to help them find alternatives, and I would dare to say that through helping children, we we can also help the adults, but because there are still a lot of adults that use violence to solve certain conflicts. So I would add that us adults also have to teach ourselves that. There are also a lot of exercises in this book, and in the introduction, the author says that it's really important to do these exercises. I give you fair warning, there are many. There are so many exercises in this book, so you really need to take your time. But I really like how she thought to do these exercises. There are, I would call them explorative exercises, because they are about exploring your childhood, expressing your feelings about your baby, and nurturing yourself. I like these type of exercises because they bring you to yourself. They don't make the baby or the child the problem. They bring you to yourself, and I think these are good exercises. There is a statement in this book that should be on everyone's fridge in the morning as a reminder to self-love, because, and this is vital, you can never adequately meet your baby's needs as long as your own needs are unmet and your life is out of balance. So being a good parent is all about first it's all about self-love. So if you don't have your stuff together, it's no wonder that you can't be the best version that you can be for your child. This is a statement not done in a judgmental way, but I think again it will help a lot of people to understand themselves through this lens, that of course, yeah, you cannot pour out of an empty cup. So you really have to fill yourself up first in order to take care of your child. And this goes a bit against of what is being praised in society, like putting your baby first, doing everything for your child, sacrificing, going all the way. And I really like that Aletha goes against this current and says, no, you should prioritize yourself first and get your act together first. In this book, there are 3 terms that are used a lot, and there's a difference between them. I will tell them, like between baby, infant, and toddler. So a baby is under 2 years old, 2.5 years old. An infant is defined as from birth to 1 year old, and a toddler from 1 year to 2.5 years old. This is really important, as I will use these 3 terms: baby, infant, and toddler. So just to give you an age perspective. So chapter number 1, beginnings, letting your baby feel loved. There are some super, I would call them spooky science facts about babies that every mother and father should know, just because it's interesting, just because it's science, and just because I think if you're planning to have a baby, it would be very, very interesting to apply this information in your life. Infants recognize stories that their mothers read to them before they were born. So if you read to your baby while you're pregnant and you read the same story over and over again, they are able to recognize it later on. Wow. Many children can remember their birth. So if you ask your child maybe your toddler, when they start to talk, they will tell you, some of them will tell you. I was blown away. I thought that babies have no memory, they can't remember, but some of them, they can remember their birth. It's really a hot topic that I'm about to approach now. It's about circumcision. In some countries, this is still practiced, but studies have shown that it is better, according to research, not to perform this surgery, let's call it like that, surgical intervention, because it really makes children more prone to crying during routine vaccinations at 4 and 6 months of age than those who have not been circumcised. Babies can have birth trauma. This was new for me. And this, if you know this information and you find this information, this can help you to also, as an adult, to rewind, replay, and think about your own trauma. What do I mean by birth trauma? If you as a baby, if the baby comes into the world and the labor is very difficult, if the mother feels like she's pressured, she's hurried, she has a bad experience, the baby will have this kind of trauma. And this is why babies need to cry. The trauma remains in their body. That stress of not being able to be brought into the world in a peaceful way, this remains in your body. It's fascinating. I had no idea. So what is important is that the emotional impact of birth trauma is reversible if the baby is small, and it's possible for babies to heal emotionally while they are still infants, so under 2.5 years old. This is gold information for every parent out there. The bonding process is the most intense after birth. Vital information. Make sure that you have eye contact with your baby as soon as they are being born. The presence of the father in the delivery room is crucial. We need to bring fathers in the moment. I think that just because we have advanced so much on a medical level and we have made it so safe and so sterile and so sometimes even super posh to deliver a baby, let's say, a lot of, unfortunately, now it's getting better, but fathers have been viciously excluded from this special moment. So if you do have the opportunity and the chance, do include the father in the room. Studies have shown this marvelous piece of insight that people who are in the delivery room while the baby is being born, they will be more attached to the baby. More attached. So it will be a difference if your grandmother, if your aunt, if your best friend are outside waiting for the delivery of the baby, versus if they would be there with you and seeing the baby as soon as they are born. The bonding will be so much stronger. Why do I tell you this, and why does this matter? Aletha says that it is crucial to grow a network of support prior to giving birth. We used to be in hunter-gatherer tribes. A whole village would raise a child. Every woman and every man should support the woman in the building of this complex support system that will help you with the child after birth. They will even help you, I don't know, to have 30 minutes for yourself. Believe me that 30 minutes for yourself as a woman when you have just delivered the baby, it will be gold. Like, you will do them a lot of favor by doing that. So it's vital. There is a sensitive period in the first minutes and hours after an infant's birth, which is optimal for bonding with the infant. Why is this again very crucial information? I'm talking for those who are choosing, this is important, choosing C-section, just because you don't get to see the baby maybe right away. So that those precious hours of bonding, if the baby is being taken away from you, if you don't get to hold your baby skin to skin, this is not good. So I think this is why every adult should know this information, because it is possible to have trauma later on in life because you haven't bonded very well in your early days. And this, as we will be able to see, this will become a blueprint for the way you attach. So really vital information. Skin to skin contact is important. Babies, they can't talk, they can't, they understand that they are being loved through skin contact. So the more skin contact with your baby, the better. They need this stimulation because inside the womb they were moving and skin would touch to their little bodies, so they need the same thing after they come out of the nurturing womb of their mommy. There is something that I read in this chapter that really blew my mind, and this might explain why some fathers can feel really excluded after birth. Like, there is this special bond with this special creature that only mom can have, and it's so magical that it's very easy to feel like you're left outside. And what is happening in the act of nursing? The act of nursing for some mothers, so not for every female, for some mothers, they experience pleasurable contractions of the uterus similar to mild orgasms. I was blown away. So maybe this is nature's way to compensate for the pain that the woman might feel at the breast level. So this was like, wow, fascinating, really, really fascinating. They need, so the babies really need the milk, of course. It's also the skin to skin contact. They need the movement. They need a heartbeat sound. This is why babies feel super relaxed if they sit very close to their mother's chest, because they can hear her heartbeat. The mother's voice, the nourishment from the mother's body. It might give you a new perspective on people's heights, what I'm about to tell you. And for me, it was very, very interesting to study, to look at people in a different way through the lens of this information that I'm about to tell you. I'm about to tell you about deprivation dwarfism. People that are short of height. Some of them, in some cases, this is not under no circumstance a general thing, but infants who failed to grow or they died, even though they received adequate food and healthcare, are suffering from the effects of prolonged stress caused by lack of physical contact. Translation: if when someone was a baby, they weren't held, they weren't hugged, there was no skin contact. Maybe the mother was away at work or the mother wasn't there. Think of the babies in orphanages. They don't grow. They stay short of height, or they even die. They're like in the orphanages. Uh, there were a lot of babies that they were being fed, but the caregivers in the orphanages, like being so overwhelmed and understaffed, nobody had the time to hold the baby, to caress them, to give them the skin. They died even though they had the food. I was blown away, and I was thinking, doing a parallel with adults, and I was thinking maybe an adult, this is like, again, this is not general, in some cases, not in all cases, but I was thinking like adults that are a bit like shorter than they're supposed to be or than average, maybe they just didn't have this when they were a baby. Imagine how much trauma and suffering is there. Really interesting. And why is this happening? Because stress inhibits growth. And when it's about stress, just imagine that they did a study where they noticed that if you hold your baby in your arms while you are bottle feeding them, they digest their milk better than those who are not being held. This is again vital information. Skin contact is vital in the sense it's life or death for a baby. If the baby is deprived by skin contact, this is like the recipe for trauma and later on problems, because they become stressed. A baby that is not being held, is not being touched, is not being cuddled, they become stressed, and that stress affects their hippocampus. What's happening in the hippocampus? There is impairment in learning and memory, and this is why it's really, really important to give skin contact to your baby. Hold them as soon as they're being born, unless you have a medical issue that prevents you from delivering naturally. Do not allow anyone to tell you that babies should be taken away and you'll see them in a couple of hours. Don't do that. Just don't. And I loved a quote from this chapter, and I will tell it to you. No child is ever too big for a cuddle. People need to be touched and held throughout their lifetime. And this is where I realized this book is not for people who have babies only. It's also for each and every one of us, because people like to be cuddled. When it's the last time when adults allowed themselves to be cuddled or to cuddle somebody else? We usually become far too serious to our own detriment, and it doesn't matter, because every person has their inner child, a baby inside, and it's really important to have this in mind. And I think this is a marvelous point done by the author that reminds us that we are social creatures. People need skin to skin contact, even if they're adults. It's really, really important. So I really, really like this. But when it comes to skin contact, when it comes to babies, do not do two things. Do not tickle them and do not pinch them. Why? The science behind this really made my neurons sizzle. When you tickle a baby, they can't defend themselves. You're basically putting them in a position of powerlessness. They don't feel safe. Maybe they laugh, but you will see that they will try to rebel. Just try to think, if someone would come and would tickle you and you would not have the power that you have as an adult, it would frustrate you. So I know a lot of adults have this habit. I had no idea how it made babies feel until I've read this book. Do not tickle your baby. Don't tickle your baby. Don't tickle anyone else's baby. Don't do it. Just don't do it, because it's not pleasant for them. Even though they might be laughing, inside it's a feeling of powerlessness. Another piece of information that will blow you away is about singing. Singing to your baby. What does it do? What does it happen? So, if you sing to your baby, it is possible that the rhythm inherent in music help babies develop some of the cognitive skills necessary for learning mathematics. I would be very curious to have the data about people who are marvelous in mathematics and see if their mothers sang to them while they were babies. I would be tempted to believe that they did, because music has a rhythm. Rhythm is mathematics. So very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, there are some exercises given in this chapter that you should do before birth and after birth. I will leave them to you, so if you're really interested, get the book and do the exercises. Giving babies love, in this chapter, it can be overwhelming. Having a baby 24 hours a day, it's overwhelming. And why is it overwhelming for some people? I never thought about this perspective, but Aletha says that having to give constantly to our babies is tremendously difficult, because many of us are still longing for the loving parents we never really had. I have sit with this for a while, because I think most parents don't even realize this, that your inner child feels some sort of sadness, like, oh, now I have to provide everything for this baby, but like nobody did it for me, and maybe adults feel it, but they're ashamed to recognize it, because you can't be jealous on your baby, or at least it's not appropriate to say that, oh, I'm giving so much to my baby and nobody gave that to me. But I think that understanding this aspect of parenting brings more empathy into the equation, and more humanity to the status of parent. Like, a parent is a human being. Like, we will give our best, but we will still have our flaws, just because our cup hasn't been filled when we were born. So it will be a challenge to fill the cup of our child from the empty cup that most of us have. So it's a very interesting idea, definitely worth pondering. Chapter number 2, crying, letting your baby release tensions. By far, this is the best chapter from that book. I'm telling you, if you don't have the time, or maybe you don't have the mood, or you're just lazy, just this chapter only, if you read it, it will be ka-ching, something inside your mind will light up, because it's wow. In the first 3 months, baby cry a lot, and contrary to popular beliefs, babies can cry up to 2 hours per day for no reason, and that is okay. Wow, I think this statement will make a lot of moms feel less guilt and release. It's really important to let babies cry. Um, Interesting, they can cry if they have some sort of allergy to cow's milk. It will be interesting for mothers who deal with that to switch from cow's milk to a hypoallergenic formula, and they will see they will have less crying. Um, but babies can cry, and they need to cry in order to release pent up tensions through this method. This helps them relax. After a good cry, the baby feels relaxed. Now let's go back to adulthood and think about how good you feel after a good cry. You feel good, something feels good. Um, and this quote that I'm about to tell you should be written on, again, on a fridge or on any like book for healthy human development. Crying to release stress is probably as important for healthy development as eating, sleeping, or being held. As a society, we have such an intolerance to crying. Like if you go to a restaurant and you're having a meal, and most people, if they hear children or a baby starts to cry, it's so annoying. It's like bzzz, and we can't stand it. But why is it that we can't sit with a baby's crying? Just because it's very difficult. It is difficult. It's not pleasant. Yeah, it doesn't sound like Mozart. And it also brings up stuff that we have deep inside of us. The extensive crying that can happen after babies that had a traumatic birth can be considered a biological stress release mechanism. It just allows excess chemicals to be flushed away from the body and to release the emotional pain resulting from the early unmet needs. So, a lot of people out there, if you went through a traumatic birth as a baby, this can explain why you had extensive crying moments that no mother could ever do anything about than to just hold you while you were crying. It would be very interesting for, if you're an adult listening to this, ask your mom, how were you when you were a baby? Did you cry a lot? Like, it would be very, very interesting to find out that information, just to help you understand yourself. So do allow babies to cry. Do not do like a lot of judgment is around crying, because people assume if the baby is crying, there is something that the mother didn't do. Like, why is your baby crying? Because if you would like, baby should be silent, or baby should be like, if they're crying, they must not be getting something. This is a big myth that is being busted by this book. Babies need to cry, and it's normal for them to cry, and I would say it's even necessary. Why crying is also important? Because if a baby has had insufficient touching and holding, he may need to cry to release the emotional pain resulting from that. So crying is like helping them a lot. If they are not getting what they need, they have to release that stress somehow, and they do it through crying. What you need to understand is that crying should always happen while the baby is being held. Why? Because crying on your own is not fun. Let's think of us adults. If you're crying and you are alone and nobody's there, you don't feel right. It's the same for a baby. The babies, if they cry, just hold them, but never hold them in the spirit of anger, in the spirit of resentment. Like, hold them with love. They're just a human being crying, that they only need to be held. Physical contact, skin to skin contact when you are crying as a baby is vital, because it provides a safe cocoon where you feel like good enough in order to release that emotion. Babies will not cry unless they feel safe to do it. So you might, it's like the privilege. The baby gives you the privilege of crying in your arms as a proof that they feel safe with you. I was blown away. I was blown away to find out this information. Crying can also help because it can happen for babies to have intense crying moments uh, when they're close to acquiring a new skill. So intense crying can precede the acquisition of a new skill, such as the ability to roll over or to crawl. Let's go back to being an adult. When you're learning something new and you don't get it, you just don't get it. It's like we all had that moment of frustration when we're like, damn it, and you start crying out of frustration. It's like, I just can't do it. And it's the same for a baby. So it is normal for them to release that emotion. So this is what I really liked about this book, because it's not only about the baby, understanding the baby, but also understanding the adult that you might be or other people might be around you by going back to the baby phase. Yeah. Babies can also cry a lot, and they cry more than they're supposed to if the household is filled with conflict. Researchers in Germany, this was a study done in Germany, they have found that extreme crying up to the point that the baby becomes like blue in infants was more likely in homes where there were partnership conflicts or mothers with severe psychological issues. So extreme crying happens when the baby is really feeling like he's in danger. And of course, if parents are fighting, if the mother is psychologically ill and she's not a fit mother from that point of view, the baby is like, he's gonna go into extremes because he feels terribly unsafe. And I think this is vital information for all parents out there. Make sure that like your way of solving conflicts before even having a baby is being done in a very like calm way, because as soon as you bring a baby into the world, you like, there's another myth, like the baby is small, they don't remember, they don't even know what's happening, so we can scream at each other and have a really good fight, because who cares about the blob that is sitting there and they have no understanding. Oh, they do. Babies are very attuned to the atmosphere around them. So do not be surprised that if you have parents that fight with each other, that baby will cry so much, and then the parents will be like, why is this child crying? It's like, because you're fighting all the time. This was again for me I feel this book is giving so much important information that can really explain a lot of the trauma that people are dealing with now. It all starts when you are a baby. Yeah. So the baby who cries a lot and goes to extreme crying, or they cry because they are not being held, they're not being touched, they're not being cuddled, that stress is going straight into their body, and that cortisol level will affect their ability to learn by damaging the hippocampus. So allowing them to cry and release that cortisol can prevent the brain damage caused by the excessive presence of this substance. So if you inhibit the crying, you are basically encouraging damage in that area. So they have done a study on 7,000 children. They had 7 years, they were 7 years old. This was fascinating. Children with the highest levels of stress had the lowest IQs. Again, to a myth that happens in schools all of the time, the assumption that low IQ tells something about the child himself, like he's stupid or something. No, the low IQ can say something about the environment at home. I think this is so important for all of the teachers out there and all of the adults out there to know this information. It can tell you about the abuse that is happening at home, about a child that cannot learn, not because he's stupid or impaired, but just because there's so much stress going on at home. Next to crying, I was again do this test just like with deprivation dwarfism, studying people based on their height and correlating that with trauma. Do this if you're just curious. When you see a baby grabbing their blanket, like we've all heard that story, they don't sleep without their pink blanket, and we think that this is a good sign. It's a bad sign. I had no idea. It's something that the author says it's a control pattern. What is it? A control pattern. It's any behavior that represses crying, pacifiers, pink blanket, thumb sucking. If a baby goes for the blanket or for the pacifier, they are inhibiting their crying. What does this mean? They don't feel it's safe enough to cry. It's not a good sign. So nursing can be a control pattern. A lot of the babies, they go for the breast although they're not hungry, but they're doing it because in fact they have a need to cry, but they don't feel safe enough to cry, so they grab to something to chew. Or I think it's really important for us to bring this information to the masses, in the sense that a lot of adults, they just don't know. They just don't know, and they give it to the baby. Oh, they need their pink blanket, they give it. It's like, no, we should help babies cry. We should encourage them to cry because that's helpful. Yeah. A study again on infants, who had a traumatic birth. They were curious to see if there was a correlation between the hour of birth and the start of the crying spells, and some of them started to cry severely at the exact hour when they were born. So the body remembers. If you're familiar with the Gabor Mate's work, the body remembers your trauma better than your brain will. So the stress of that traumatic birth is imprinted in your body. And if you, I don't know, if you got born at 10 a.m. after a very painful labor, and maybe the birth was with complications, and at 10 a.m., that baby will probably have some crying spells, and you'll have no idea. It's the same hour they were born. Amazing, amazing. This is why I love science and research, because you can find out some information that blows you away. Um, what's the downside of crying? The downside of crying is that it's the number one reason why abuse is happening. So crying is a very potent trigger for abuse. In one survey, 80% of abusive parents admitted that their baby's crying was the trigger that led them to go to that abusive behavior. So it's tough. It's not Mozart. It's horrible. Like, a baby's crying, there's no music in it. There's no falling cascades and relaxing rain sounds, and no, it's annoying. Let's say it as it is. It's annoying. It's very annoying. And there are some babies that can cry for hours because they have so much pent up trauma that they need to release. It's really hard, and I don't know what the situation could be transformed into, but it makes sense that the most abuses happen when babies are crying, because it's so annoying, and some parents, they just want it to stop. And it's definitely difficult. This is why being a good parent, being someone who can hold their stuff together when a baby cries for hours, it's difficult. It's not easy. The only solution I can think about is wearing some earplugs to just dampen down the noise and hold your baby and just let them cry. It's difficult. And I do wonder how many of us, the adults of 2024, had the privilege of crying in the arms of an understanding adult. It's tough. It's tough. It's really tough. So we need to have a lot of compassion for all of the parents out there, because it's tough. Raising a baby is tough. Chapter 3. Food. Babies love food. They love to eat all of the time. So letting your baby become self-regulated. What does that mean? First of all, when it comes to food, it would be ideal if you have the possibility to breastfeed them. Breastfeeding is the healthiest thing that a baby could receive. They have higher IQs, the babies who are breastfed, and there is the colostrum. The colostrum is the liquid excreted before the first milk appears, and it's at the highest in the first 12 hours after delivering your baby. This is why it's super vital for the baby to be brought to the mother and for the baby to ingest the first precious liquid from the mother's breast, which is colostrum. And again, how often does that happen now when the process of delivering a baby has become like, I don't know, packaging a McDonald's? This is where we're doing it wrong. A woman's attitude towards breastfeeding will impact the amount of milk that she will have. So if she's worried about her appearance, if she's made to feel embarrassed by the act of breastfeeding, it will psychologically make her maybe have less supply of milk or having no milk at all. So to all of the women out there, be very self-aware about your attitude, and for all of the men out there, make breastfeeding be okay. And yeah, we are mammals. The first purpose of the breasts was to feed. We have put other connotations to to the breast afterwards, but let's not forget that the first role that the breasts have is to feed. So a lot of the women are worried and they don't do it because, yeah, they're worried about sagging, about looking bad afterwards. But what's more important, to have a healthy baby or to just maintain some appearances? Because at 80 years old they'll be sagging anyway, so you might as well feed your baby properly. um, the author recommends a pattern of longer feedings, um, offering both breasts at the feeding. um, don't nurse for comfort. Don't confuse food with love. A lot of women, they do this. No, the baby will develop a control pattern and want the boob when they are actually wanting to cry. So don't do that. Or a lot of mothers feel rejected if the child, once they are at the breast, they don't get the milk. Yeah, it's not a good mentality. Try to get rid yourself out of that thinking pattern, um, because it can affect, interestingly or not, over nursing can affect your preference for sugar as a toddler. So if you have been overnourished as a toddler, they're more likely to become addicted to sweet foods later on. It would be very interesting to do a study for the adults who have a sweet tooth and they're very like addicted to sweets, to see if as a baby they were overnourished. Some studies show that they were very so. It's again, I'm telling you, being a parent is the toughest job in the world. Um, and we see this in society, going from the baby level. Overnourished babies, they may grow into adults who tend to eat, drink, or smoke instead of crying when they need to. We have a lot of adults who do this. A lot of adults need to cry. They don't need to smoke. A lot of adults don't need to become alcoholics. They need to cry, but they don't know how to cry, so they become an alcoholic. Yeah. The longer you nurse your baby, the better. So in this rushed society, we have put everything on a high speed. So it's not good. Don't rush it. Do not rush it. Make sure you have eye contact with your baby when you're feeding them. The meal time is a special moment for a baby. They connect with a source of nourishment. So I see this often and it really breaks my heart. I see babies, they are being bottle fed and the mother has the bottle, but she's looking on the phone, or she's looking sideways, or she's talking with somebody else. And that baby, he's just alone. He has a bottle and it's like, don't do that. Your baby will never be this small ever again. You'll never have this opportunity ever again. Do it properly. I know it's very tough the first 3 years, but you're building the foundation of a future human being. So it's not easy, but this book made me realize how important it is to take things slowly with the baby. Take him slowly. He needs the eye contact. He needs longer meals. In our rhythm, it looks like it's slow, or like we're so rushed that it's like we feel like we're losing time. By doing what? By offering the baby the time that he needs, we're losing time? I don't think so. So I really liked this part of the chapter. Uh, Also give the babies options. So have a little plate later on when you start to diversify from where the baby can pick the food. Babies can feel what they need. Give them options. A lot of the times, like they get only carrot, like boiled carrot, or like yum yum, why don't you eat it? Give them more options. It's like, why not? This is a new perspective and I really, really loved it and it makes sense. Us as adults, we also know what we need. Like maybe you crave today, I don't know, pineapple. Something in your body needs what that pineapple has, and you know it. It's the same with the babies. Babies know what they need. We just need to listen to them more and show them the respect. Yeah. Also, it is very encouraged to let them feed on their own. I know it's messy, it's dirty, you're gonna have a hell of a lot of laundry to do, but if you let the baby feed on his own, he will become more self-sufficient. A lot of moms, they feel a sort of betrayal if like the baby is like, no, no, like you get the little spoon, like open your mouth, and like no, like because they want to feed on themselves, like they want to do it on their own. And it's like, it's something really magical in having someone totally dependent on you, but the minute they start to want to become independent, you feel like a sort of betrayal. Don't do that. The purpose of bringing a child into the world is to give them wings to fly. So encourage them to become self-sufficient by allowing them to do things on their own and to have options. Give them options. Even when they're babies, give them options and talk to them. It's really important. Chapter 4. Sleep, letting your baby rest. Boy, how would we like our babies to sleep peacefully every night, just as we do. It doesn't happen. So 50% of babies between the ages of 1 and 2 regularly resist bedtime. They don't want to go to sleep, and they're causing problems for the parents. Why? Babies need physical closeness when falling asleep. So you have to cuddle them. You can't just send them to bed. Not only when they're a baby, also later on in life. This is why the phrase go to bed, it's never working. You need to cuddle them. You need to hug them. They need physical closeness. This is something I had no idea about, but it totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. If they're whining, if they're fussing, this is an indication of a need to cry, not a need to sleep. So allow them to cry. And toddlers, remember the toddlers' age range, the toddlers often need to cry before falling asleep. It's like a release of the pent-up stress gathered throughout the day. It's like a shower. Yeah, it's like an emotional shower. Yeah, this is a good metaphor. Crying is like an emotional shower. You're washing away everything bad that happened throughout the day, and you do it before you go to sleep, obviously. Yeah, so again, this was like really, really fascinating to find out. I'll give you a quote from this chapter. This is a quote that it should become the motto of our society. Maybe in the future, not the society of 2024, but hopefully this society will be having in a couple of years. A few years of attentive parenting at the start can accomplish much toward the prevention of later problems. So we have to build a society where taking care of a baby is seen as gold, because giving 3 to 5 years, maybe to 7 years from someone's life to really properly raise your children, it will lay such a solid foundation that we will have less adults with suicide, with mental issues, criminals, people that are addicted. It also happens in the first years, so it's not a lot. We can end up living 80 years, 90 years, maybe some of us will live to up to 100 years old. In the context of this, is 7 years that much to give to your baby? Really? And I was like, oh my God, she's right. She's so right. So yeah. Chapter 5, play. Letting your baby learn. So babies love to cry, they love to eat, they love to sleep, and they do love to play. So play is really, really important. The most learning happens when babies are playing, and also when children are playing. And I would dare to say that also when adults are playing, they are learning. But there is a distinction that is being made by the author that again made me ponder. It's not intentional, but it happens. Parents tend to treat the boys and the girls differently as soon as they're being born. They touch and cuddle and talk to their infant daughter more than they do it with their infant son. And this is what is the true explanation of why maybe girls tend to be more emotionally expressive and more attuned to their emotions than men are, like, because if you haven't received this when you are a baby, of course you're going to grow up in an adult that doesn't know how to cope with emotions. So yeah, it's happening. It's really, really happening, and it's so deeply entrenched and in our culture for baby girls to be treated differently. It shouldn't. A baby is a baby. It doesn't matter what's the sex of the baby. They should be treated with the same amount of cuddle and touch and love. Yeah. Um, a very, it might be controversial what this piece of information, and it might make some mothers feel a bit like touched. But mothers that are highly intrusive, frequently interrupting their child, we all know those mothers. When they were 6 months old, they were more likely for that child to be diagnosed as hyperactive at 6 to 8 years of age. Mothers who interrupt their babies or their children are like, when you see your child or your baby being super absorbed by an activity, and you're like, it's mealtime, let's go, and you take them from there. It's like, that is intrusive. If you see, and again, it's about respect. If you see a human being, regardless of the age that they have, if they're highly immersed in some activity, it is a proof of respect not to intervene. This is how frustration happens, and of course they become hyperactive later on in life because they have a lot of pent-up frustration. Imagine wanting to complete a puzzle and someone coming at you every 30 minutes, interrupting you. Oh, make it every 10 minutes, interrupting you. How would you feel? I think that a lot of the mothers, they don't know this. They don't know what this intrusiveness is making. And they also have the feeling that it doesn't matter. The baby is so small, it matters. Everything matters. When the baby is that small, everything matters. So it is done out of care. Oh, it's meal time. If they would be hungry, they would eat. If they're absorbed in an activity, let them. They will not starve if the meal is happening 30 minutes later. Really, really vital. My favorite quote from the book, it is in this chapter. I will leave it for the end, but it's about the cultural attitude that our society is currently having about parenting. And this is happening from the 1980s up to 2024, unfortunately. And I think that this quote will help a lot of men and women that embarked in the journey of parenting to feel a sense of dignity when the society has taken this from the role of parenting. So I will come back to it later on. Babies learn to laugh at 5 months old, and laughter is therapy. So allow your babies to laugh. Don't tickle them in order to make them laugh, okay? Just allow them to laugh. Allow them to be silly. Allow them games. I was fascinated by a game that the author suggests in order to heal birth trauma. Create a tunnel with the sheet through which your baby can crawl to reach you. This is a birth simulation game that can help your baby heal. I was blown away. It's a very simple game. You can do it at home and it makes sense. The baby crawls through the birth canal and reaches to you. And if he wasn't able to do that when he was born, he is able to do it in a game. And he can heal. It's that simple. And there are power reversal games, like allow the baby to knock you because you are so big, you are so powerful. It's like the baby feels they have no power over you. So they do have the frustration, like, boy, would I like to kick this big monster out. And if you're playing a game with them and you allow yourself to be conquered and defeated, and they got to laugh, it allows them to release the frustration. It allows them to feel powerful. Offer this gift to your baby. Just imagine the baby must live with the fact that they can be removed, they can be moved, they can be like a bag of potatoes, you know. I take you from here and get you to there. If you are an adult, you wouldn't like anyone to do this to you. Like, if someone would come now and pick me up from my room now as I am streaming and take me and put me in another, like, I would be mad. I would be pissed. I'm like, what's happening? But imagine this is the life of a baby for the first 3 years in their lives. Like, they are powerless. They just sit there like a cute little lump of dimples, and everyone can pick them and move them and squeeze them and pinch them, and like, they are powerless, and it's very frustrating for a baby. So they need to release the tension of being so powerless. So yeah. Chapter number 6, conflicts. Letting your baby feel respected. I think that next to the crying, maybe this would be the second chapter as in the level of importance. Respect your baby. It doesn't matter that he poops and you have to change the diaper. He's worthy of respect. A lot of parents love their baby, but they don't know how to respect their baby. Really, like, this is why I'm telling you this book is not only about babies. It's also about attitude towards life. Any form of life is worthy of respect, regardless of how powerless they might be in front of you. Um, when a parent inflicts pain on a baby in a form of punishment, this can destroy the baby's sense of trust and security. This is why abuse, verbal abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, does so much damage. Um, Children whose parents use harsh discipline on them, they don't do well in school. Punishment correlates with low IQ, low school performance. Um, Babies can have severe constipation if they're being punished during toilet training. And if their parents are physically violent to them, those children tend to become antisocial and have violent behaviors later on. So it's a serious matter. Babies don't misbehave. This is another myth busted by this book. There's no such thing as the baby manipulates you. Oh, such a bad baby. No, baby have needs, and it is your duty to fulfill them. You are at the service of life. So I think this is crucial to understand. Yeah. A lot of parents give an upbringing to their babies that promotes blind obedience to authority. Don't do that. Use democratic discipline. This is an approach in which everybody wins, and nobody wins the conflict at the expense of someone else. There's no like I win and you lose. And when you do have a conflict with your baby, ask yourself, what does my baby need right now, and what do I need right now? So both questions, and look at the solution. And talk to your baby. You must talk to your baby from the moment they are born. Even when you change their diaper, even like, hey, this is how babies learn. They're not a blob. They can understand. Talk to them. Explain what is going to happen to them. Just imagine, like, it's they are in such a powerless position. You can't just do things to a baby and not talk to them. I'm changing your diaper. I'm preparing your dinner. Oh, look, there's a spot on your blouse. They understand, and they will learn to communicate if you communicate with them. Yeah. I love this quote. Life with a baby is a continual decision-making process. I think this should stimulate any person to become even more creative, because you don't get bored with the baby. They're always different. Today is different, tomorrow is different, 10 minutes from now is different. Like, you have to constantly adjust to this magical creature. So yeah, I think it's really vital to understand that a baby will push your limits. It will push you to become the best version that you can be. And it also push your nerves and your buttons. And you'll want to scream, but what can you do? Yeah. Another sign of respect towards a baby, an infant, or a toddler is to let them know why you make a certain request. Why? So it's like, because I told you so. This is not an explanation. This is from the ego. This is from I am the mighty parent. No, explain. Why do I want you to do XYZ? This is why. Use logic. Respect them. It's like, if you tell someone to do something and you don't tell them why, it's like an insult to their intelligence. Like, oh, you're not gonna understand, just do it. It's like calling them stupid. Like, do talk to children and explain them why you are doing certain things, why they should be doing certain things. Talk, communicate. This is not a, how should I call it, not to sound very bad, but this is not like communism, like where a baby sits and you are like the tyrant and you're gonna do this and this and this and this. No, no, it should be mutual respect. Babies love their parents unconditionally. Unconditionally. I think the parents have the problem of loving unconditionally the baby. Yeah. Temper tantrums, we all know that. They are more common in toddlers who were frequently distracted from crying during the first year. So when you're gonna see a child throwing themselves out in the floor of a super mall because they have seen some toys, yeah, that's not a spoiled child, that's a child that didn't do his crying. It's really, really interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, about abuse, to put abuse into a bigger perspective, not to condone it, not to justify it, but most parents who seriously abuse their babies were abused themselves when they were children. If you remember at the beginning of the book, when I told you that people who do stupid things in hurtful ways, they were hurt as well. So no, yeah, no healthy human being would ever abuse their child. So they're not well. So it's just bringing compassion into the equation. And last chapter, chapter number 7, attachment, letting your baby feel safe. It's very important to repair. Ruptures will happen. Just repair them. That's important. A basic requirement for the formation of a healthy attachment is that babies need to have a continuous and predictable relationship with at least one person. This first love relationship will be the basis for all of the future relationships. Tell me how you were loved, so I will tell you how will you love someone else. So no matter how and who was that first person in your life, you are using that love blueprint everywhere you go. So yeah. And in this attachment style formation, crying is also helpful, because if you have an insecurely attached child that does not trust, he needs to cry first. And they need to release that emotional pain first before they can fully love. They cannot fully love until they have healed. And I would dare to say that it's the same for adults. Yeah. If you have the possibility, do not put your child, your baby into daycare during the first year. It can literally hamper their development. I think it is tragic. It is not an evolution. It is tragic that we have developed institutions where babies can be brought at 3 months old or 6 months old to be taken care of. It's tragic. It's not evolution. Evolution would be to allow parents and mothers to sit at home with their babies at least 2 years, at least for the minimum 2 years, to offer them the healthy foundation that society needs in order to have healthy individuals later on. So don't do this. If you have the pot, like create a pot, just don't do it. I had a hunch that it's bad, but now there is research showing that it's really bad. It's really bad for a baby. It's not good. No bueno. Yeah. A very important statement, and I will say this before I will end my stream with my favorite quote. There is a cultural myth that parents should be able to raise children on their own without any support from society. This is completely unrealistic. I could not agree more. It is unrealistic, and it is just absurd, because you need a whole tribe to raise a child. And for me, it's nerve-wracking, the idea that mothers receive less money when they have to raise a child, and they have the pressure. And I don't know what was in the mind of whoever made the law, but if another human being comes into the world, you need more money, not less. Just because you stay at home raising another human being, you should be paid more, not less. This is how screwed up society is now, that it is treating the job of parenting as being something less. This is why we are having huge problems now with everything that is going on in the consciousness of people doing harm to other people. My favorite quote from this book, it's a really tough one. It has some rough edges, but this is why I really love this book, and I have reread it because Aletha really hits the nail on the head, and she hits it, boy, like it's straight to Guatemala. Like, it's the truth. It's the ugly truth, believe it or not. It's like, this is the truth. And this is again why I'm telling you that this book is not only for the understanding of baby development, but it's also for the understanding of human development, and to put into a bigger context what is happening at a societal level. Why did we have Hitler? Why did we have Mother Teresa? Why do we have wars? Why do we have hunger? Why do we have criminals? Why? So this book is just for that. Again, it's profound. You wouldn't think that you would find out so much about society by reading a book about babies. So my favorite quote, let me find it. Okay, I will end with this, and it's the truth, the ugly truth, as Aletha Solter said it, and she said it in 1984, and it is so relevant for 2024, and this really should make anyone wonder. Many parents resent having to pay attention to their children because our culture belittles and degrades the important work of parenting. People have traditionally considered this to be mere women's work that requires no special skills. It is little wonder that so many mothers are anxious to get out of the home to where they feel the real action is. If you are a woman feeling bored playing with your baby, much of your feeling may actually have its roots in these cultural attitudes. you may begin to pity yourself for being stuck with such demeaning work. If cultural attitudes were to change overnight and child rearing were considered to be an important, challenging, and interesting job, and if parents were given both financial and emotional support to be responsible for their baby's care and education, there might be fewer bored parents. If it were a well-paid job, it would probably be in great demand, because what could it be more exciting than the opportunity to observe a new human being, discover and learn? The unfolding of a child's intelligence is, in fact, where some of the real action is. Yes, we need to build the society that encourages the jobs that really, really matter. I'll close this. Hopefully you have found this of great use. Grab the book if you want to make the exercises, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.